NASCAR announced some changes to the appeals, what the appeals committee can decide on an appeal, and they also say they're going to start showing parts and pieces again that are taken. Do you think that will help at all with any transparency?
No, I don't believe so. I'm actually kind of surprised on the whole Denny deal. I feel like a lot of that is just he did a really, really good job of explaining it. I listened to his podcast of this week, and I mean, I've been through some of those appeals before, and you think you've done a good job selling your case, and they actually kind of back down on the other side. And so you think you've got a really good shot of getting something reversed or overturned, and then it just completely sideswipes you that it doesn't happen that way. So I have no clue how that is a penalty. When in the rule book, if you basically get into somebody or wreck somebody, then it can be a penalty of any sort that they want to enforce on you or infringe on you. So at the Clash, how come Joey Logano wasn't penalized for wiping me out? You know what I mean? Like, every chance somebody crashes from somebody else from car contact, it can be a penalty, it can be a fine, it can be whatever. So their rule book contradicts itself quite a lot, and all of us have a very, very hard understanding of exactly what's what. So it is what it is, and yeah, we'll keep going.
And speaking of appeals, as far as the truck penalties that came out this week, do you plan to appeal any of those?
No point in appealing. We'll lose. I don't have enough money to afford lawyers, so we'll let it go.
We'll come over here to the right.
That's not in the budget.
Even Kyle, Jasmine Sharp with the podium finish. So what's the dynamic been for you working with your crew chief, Randall Burnett, as you work towards building on the success of your California win?
Yeah, no, I mean, working with Randall's been super good. We've had a great relationship thus far, and just the communication styles and his background, my background, being from similar demographics, if you will, racing the short tracks, late model ranks, things like that. So we do understand each other a lot. It's just the nature of how do we apply what we're doing to the racetrack better. I feel like that's kind of our struggle, and we're continuing to work on that and find the pieces of how we can further improve on our processes of how we go about building a setup and making it translate to be successful at the track. So California was awesome, fantastic. That was a lot based off of what they did last year, and it worked. Some of the other stuff that we've done this year, we've based off of that, but we've also kind of gone towards something more similar that I've been accustomed to driving, being a little bit on the snugger side than what Reddick was always used to. So maybe we just need to forget anything that I tell them how to do and go more off of what they've always been doing.
And second question is, NASCAR has raced at different tracks like the Coliseum, and here with this Bristol dirt track. How important is it for the series overall to diversify its schedule?
I mean, I believe it's probably the most diverse, if not the most diverse in any form of motorsports, even in any form of sport for that matter. Soccer, football, baseball, they all look the same. They all might not exactly feel the same, but they all look the same. And then when we go to the racetrack, they don't look anything close to each other. The Clash is entirely different looking and seeing than what Martinsville is, and those are probably the two most comparable that you have on the schedule of racetracks. So, having the opportunity of racing at super speedways like Daytona, Talladega, the short tracks of Bristol Dirt, Martinsville, the Clash, and even the 1.5 miles that are somewhat cookie cutter, a lot of them are very different.
We'll come over here to the left and then right down here in the front.
Kyle, we got the Chris Weaver, Fox 8 WGHP. Kyle, we got the All-Star race coming up in a little over a month. Your teammate got to do some tire testing there. What kind of feedback do you expect from him, and what are your feelings toward going to North Wilkesboro?
Yeah, no, it's there's not going to be a whole lot of grip there. I think the grip was gone probably back in the 80s, and they haven't touched it since. So, it almost would have been worth probably putting dirt on it before us going there. So then you had dirt smeared into all the rocks and acted as an aggregate, and it would burn off and lose grip as you went. So that could have been interesting, but it didn't get the dirt on it quite in time before they made the decisions for all of us to go out there. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be cool to just get back to a nostalgic venue. I enjoy all the NASCAR footage of stuff from the early 2000s, 1990s, when I really kind of tuned in and started watching. So, I don't know that you can go watch film of past races there and learn a whole lot, maybe a little bit. But I certainly do remember the times of, Terry Labonte being there in the silver car, the Ironman car, and then Jeff Gordon winning the last race there, and just the moments between Earnhardt and Bodine, Earnhardt and Rudd, and a lot of the other guys that would kind of feud a little bit there at North Wilkesboro. So cool place.
We'll go ahead, Dustin, and then we'll come to Lee.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. I want to go back to the 2015 season. When you see somebody in your car as you're rehabilitating, how does that impact you in the sense of seeing somebody in the car, but also seeing the sport continue on? And I think you'd missed one race before then, but for the most part, look, there was a race. Kyle Busch was going to be in the race, and to go what was that experience like, and how did that impact you once you were able to return to the car?
Yeah, to me, there's two ways, probably more, that you could go about it, but the two that I think about is just it shows you how small you are of a piece in this sport, that it'll be there with or without you, and that was always Bill France Sr.'s line, I believe, years ago, right? That the show will go on, and we don't need you, you need us. But then the second nature to that is, when you're on the sidelines, injured, whatever it might be, and you see your race car going out there, you miss it. You miss being in there, and that, I think, goes to show your drive and your determination, your passion, your fire, your desire, everything for what your passion is in being a race car driver and being here in this sport. So it gave me a new recognition to, could I retire and just walk away in the 2015 season and just be done and not worry about coming back? And, you kind of think through some of those, and then you go through a couple of weekends of watching the car go around the racetrack without you in it, and you're like, no, I don't like this. I don't think I could do that, So you want to get back out there, and I think that kind of relights the fire. So it was good to have that for me.
And secondly, it kind of related to what Bob was asking, but in terms of the rulings, and as you note, how the rule book kind of differs from each other, some of the different rules kind of conflict, do you need clarification from NASCAR? Is that something you seek? Or in one sense, are you almost hoping that NASCAR starts calling things a little bit more aggressively and not allowing some, what may look like a crash, and just inserting themselves in and making a decision in light of what you've talked about in the last few weeks about respect and maybe trying to rein that in? Or is that going way over the line and causing a problem that just adds to it?
Well, I think where I agree a lot with Denny is if we're supposed to be self-policing and have the opportunity to be able to go out there and do something, if someone did something to us to be able to go back and retaliate, how are we supposed to do that? What does that tell me what is and isn't okay? Apparently saying it 2 days after the fact is not okay. Saying it right after the fact when you're still hot and bothered is okay. But it's
Byron got penalized still, and he admitted to it after Texas.
right. Yeah. Well, fantastic. Great point. I don't think Denny brought that one up. Maybe he did in his presentation, but he said he had about 35 examples. So I wonder if I was any of those. The nature of it is, to me, how do you clean this up? I think you can clean up a lot of it by doing what we're all supposed to be doing at the local short track ranks, is penalizing those that are involved in the caution and sending them to the rear of the field. If there's a spin and you got punted by somebody and the caution is drawn, those two go to the back. The one spinning is already going to the back, but the one that caused the spin should have to go to the back. So, that's a start. That's not a fix, but that's just a start to kind of help, in the instance of what all goes down. So, okay, you want to bring up an example of COTA. So you had the one who got into the 48, who got into the 19. Is that right?
148, 19, 99.
99. So who do you penalize between the 48 and the 1, right? All of them. Anybody that's involved in the caution, go to the back. That's how we do it with the kids racing at 7 years old. So if we can teach 7 and 8 year olds that that's not the way you're supposed to do it, and you need to race clean, then surely we should be able to teach 37 to, I guess it's 19. You start at 19, so 18, 19 year olders to Harvick's 46, 47. So we should be able to figure it out.
Go ahead, Lee.
I don't know that I answered anything, so you're welcome.
Kyle, did you see any improvements at Richmond with the short track package that you think will help at Martinsville?
So far with the lower downforce package, I have been loose. So we have not figured out how to get my back end in the racetrack the way I need it to be. So that is definitely been our struggle, and so I don't see the same struggle from some of the other guys. They've been able to figure it out a lot better than we have, so they've been faster. But as far as the aero deficiencies that you see trailing other cars, yes, it's better on a 1 to 10 scale. If we were a 7 bad before, I think we're still probably a 5. You know, the Xfinity cars, when I ran the Xfinity car at Phoenix, you know, I would say that it had a 1, 1.5, maybe a 2 at the worst moments of aero deficiency following people. So the way we used to do things is better than the next gen way of doing things.
We're going to go right here in the front, then to Mark in the back, Reed, and then finish up with Chris up in the press box.
Kyle Ben White with Fayetteville Observer. I want to go a little bit of a history question here, talking about the 600 at Charlotte, okay? 40 years ago, of course, we raced in the daytime. Drivers had relief drivers, had their tongue sticking out. A long, long day, okay? I realize the cars are different now. Mm-hmm. We race at night. So with all that said, is it still, what is it now as far as physically taxing, mentally taxing, even if we're doing it at night? What would you say? Is it both physically and mentally taxing still, even with this car?
Yeah, so you're kind of going based off of the man versus machine of that era, you know, and I would say that parts and pieces of cars were a lot different back then, so you kind of had to drive them differently from back then on taking care of your equipment and not using up your stuff and whatnot, where the cars now are about bulletproof, you know, just run them as hard as you can all race long, all the time. And that wears on a driver for sure, of just being on top of it every single lap and giving it everything all the time. So yeah, it's definitely physically demanding. You know, you get to, I've had Coke 600s where after the race is over, I'm fine, I'm good, I have no issue. You know, and I've had Coke 600s where I looked up at the scoreboard and it was mile marker 500, and I was like, okay, you know, we should be done. And I'm like, damn, we still got 100 more to go. This is going to be a night, you know. So I think it kind of depends on, you know, your routine, your workout, and that sort of stuff. I've also had more super speedway races probably where I felt more mental fatigue, just of all the decision-making processes and everything that you got to think through, where Coke 600 I don't think is too terrible on that for me. Yeah.
Go in the back to Mark.
Mark Carroll, PRN. Kyle, following up a little bit on Lee's question at Martinsville, last year, and I realize we've got a new package, but no matter what the package is, were you surprised to see a guy like William Byron go out and lead 490 some odd laps at Martinsville? Yeah,
I mean, you would think at least coming to pit road and having a stumble on pit road or something like that would kind of shuffle up the order at least once, maybe twice during a race, but it didn't really do that. So, yeah, I mean, you are kind of surprised by that. We had a little bit of that with the old car too. You know, Truex, myself, at the Coke 600, actually, we led how many laps of that? 300 and something of that race. So it's not always unprecedented to see someone be able to run up front and dominate a race, but with this next gen car last year, it was a lot easier to just mess up people's aero following you and make them suffer more than what you were out front. So hopefully that doesn't happen this time around.
We'll take a question from Reed and then go to Chris, and we'll wrap there.
Reed Spencer with the NASCAR Wire. Looking back on the win here last year, that, as it turned out, enabled you to keep your streak going, mm-hmm. and then basically to break it this year to set the record. Would you have ever thought going into that a win on dirt would have been so integral to that streak? No,
definitely not. So it certainly shines a light on just how important every single race, every single week is, you know, and for the nature of us going to all these different venues and having the diversity that we do and the racetracks that we go to is fun to a point. I think this was a little bit more gimmicky, nostalgic, like just not a true racetrack that we've been accustomed to going to, and I don't know that we're really capturing the Cup Series allure here just with these cars, right? Like dirt cars are dirt cars. They're fun on dirt. Like you can drive them way differently. You can drive them harder and whatnot. But these things here, you're always on the ragged. You are literally trying to not spin out when you're going around there on the racetrack. So how do you make a pass when you're already past the limit of spinning out? It's tough. And so it just makes it for a tough race. Makes it for a little bit of track position race. No different than anything else that we really do. But that dirt race last year was certainly significant to my years of winning races and capitalizing on that when we did. Lucky for us.
And we'll wrap up with Chris in the press box. Go ahead, Chris.
Chandler Smith said earlier this week on a podcast that he has the utmost respect for you and still wants to talk to you about what happened at Phoenix. Do you have any interest in talking to Chandler, or you've already moved on?
I've pretty much already moved on. I think it'll come in due time. But if you had the utmost respect for someone, you wouldn't race them the way I got raced. So I'll leave it at that.